In 2002, psychologists Delroy Paulhus and Kevin Williams identified something that had been hiding in plain sight for decades. 3 personality traits, distinct from each other, overlapping just enough to share a common thread. They called it the Dark Triad: narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy. 3 different faces, 3 different motivations, 3 completely different ways of moving through a world populated by people they fundamentally do not experience as equals. Together, they represent the most studied, most recognized, and most dangerous personality cluster in all of psychology. Today, we're going to meet all 3, not through clinical case studies, through 3 of cinema's most perfectly constructed Dark Triad characters. Each one a textbook embodiment of a single trait, each one more unsettling than the last. By the end of this video, you'll understand not just what the Dark Triad is, but how to recognize it in films, in the world, and possibly in people much closer to you than you'd like to think. Before we meet our 3 villains, you need to understand what makes these traits distinct from each other, because the differences are as important as the similarities. All 3 share what researchers call a dark core: low empathy, a willingness to exploit others, and a fundamental prioritization of self-interest above morality. But the motivation behind each trait is completely different. The narcissist wants admiration. Their entire psychological architecture is organized around being seen, being celebrated, being recognized as exceptional. Take away the audience and the narcissist begins to unravel. The Machiavellian wants control. They are patient, strategic, and calculating. They play the long game, sometimes for years, working toward outcomes they identified long before anyone else noticed they were playing. They don't need the spotlight. They prefer the shadows. The psychopath wants neither admiration nor control in any meaningful emotional sense. They want stimulation. They are driven by impulse, by thrill, by the immediate experience of power. And they are uniquely unencumbered by the fear, guilt, or empathy that keeps most people in check. 3 different hungers, 3 different strategies, 3 completely different kinds of dangerous, and now 3 films that captured each one perfectly. Miranda Priestly from The Devil Wears Prada is not a traditional villain. She doesn't commit crimes. She doesn't manipulate in the shadows. She doesn't need to. She simply expects the world to organize itself around her, and through a combination of talent, power, and sheer force of personality, it does. Miranda is a textbook case of what psychologists call grandiose narcissism, the most recognizable form of the disorder, characterized by an unshakable belief in one's own exceptionalism, an insatiable appetite for admiration, and a complete intolerance for anything that threatens the self-image. Watch how Miranda enters any room in the film. The energy shifts. People scramble. Her assistant, Andy Sachs, lives in a state of perpetual anxiety because Miranda's approval is completely unpredictable, and that unpredictability is not accidental. Psychologists who study narcissistic leadership identify a specific dynamic called intermittent reinforcement, the pattern of unpredictably alternating approval and disapproval that creates intense psychological dependency in those around the narcissist. Miranda doesn't praise consistently because consistent praise would give people a stable footing. The unpredictability keeps everyone desperate. The moment that reveals Miranda most completely isn't her cruelty. It's the scene where she learns she's about to be replaced and responds not with panic, but with cold, immediate strategy. She maneuvers to secure her position by sacrificing someone else without a flicker of hesitation or remorse. That response, the instant pivot from threatened to strategic, is the narcissistic injury response in its purest form. The ego is threatened. The ego defends itself. Anyone in the way becomes collateral. What makes Miranda fascinating as a character and genuinely useful as a psychology case study is that she is also objectively extraordinary at what she does. Her taste is impeccable. Her instincts are correct. Her success is real. This is the most important thing to understand about narcissism in the real world. It often coexists with genuine competence. The narcissist's belief in their own exceptionalism is frequently partially justified, which is exactly what makes them so difficult to resist and so impossible to leave. If Miranda Priestly needs you to see her, Tom Ripley from the talented Mr. Ripley needs you not to. Tom is a study in patience, in calculated invisibility, in the long game played over months and years by someone who has no emotional investment in the people he's using, only in the outcome he's working toward. Machiavellianism, named for Renaissance philosopher Niccolo Machiavelli, describes a personality pattern centered on strategic manipulation, emotional detachment, and a pragmatic willingness to deceive, use, and discard people in service of personal goals. Where the narcissist is fueled by emotion, by the hunger for admiration, by the rage of injury, the Machiavellian is fueled by calculation. They experience people primarily as variables in an equation they are constantly solving. Tom Ripley begins the film as a nobody, a fraud, a forger, a person of no status or resources. By the end, he has assumed another man's identity, his wealth, his life, and his relationships, and has eliminated everyone who got in the way. But notice how he does it. Tom doesn't explode. He doesn't rage. He doesn't act on impulse. Every move Tom makes is a response to a situation that has developed beyond his control. And his response is always calculated, always minimal, always designed to produce the maximum result with the minimum exposure. Researchers who study Machiavellianism note that high Machs, people who score at the extreme end of the Machiavellianism scale, share several consistent characteristics. They are exceptionally skilled at reading social situations. They feel little emotional connection to the people they interact with, and they are highly effective in unstructured environments where the rules are unclear and social intelligence determines outcomes. Tom Ripley thrives precisely because the world of Dickie Greenleaf, wealthy expatriates in 1950s Italy, operating largely outside normal social accountability, is the ultimate unstructured environment. There are no rules. And Tom understands this before anyone else does. The most chilling moment in the film isn't any of the violence. It's the final scene. Tom alone, having achieved everything and feeling nothing about what it cost. Not guilt, not relief, not even satisfaction. Just calculation about what comes next. That emotional absence, the inability to feel the weight of what you've done, is the defining feature of Machiavellianism at its extreme. And unlike narcissism, it leaves almost no visible fingerprints. And then there is Anton Chigurh. There is no gradual introduction appropriate for Anton Chigurh. He simply appears, and the film immediately communicates something that takes most villains an entire movie to establish. This person operates by completely different rules than everyone else on screen. Primary psychopathy, the form Anton most closely represents, is characterized by a complete and apparently innate absence of the emotional responses that regulate most human behavior. Fear, guilt, empathy, remorse. These are not feelings Anton suppresses. They are feelings Anton does not appear to have access to at all. What makes Anton so psychologically significant and so studied in academic psychology is the coin flip scene. A gas station owner makes the mistake of engaging Anton in small talk. Anton decides, apparently arbitrarily, that this man must call a coin flip or face death. The owner is terrified and confused. He doesn't understand the rules. He doesn't understand what he's done. And that's the point. He hasn't done anything. Anton doesn't operate on the basis of what people have done. He operates on the basis of his own internal framework, a code that is completely coherent to him and completely alien to everyone else. Psychologists who study Robert Hare's psychopathy checklist, the gold standard forensic tool for identifying psychopathy, identify two distinct factors. Factor 1 describes the emotional and interpersonal features, the charm, the grandiosity, the callousness, the inability to feel remorse. Factor 2 describes the behavioral features, the impulsivity, the criminal versatility, the parasitic lifestyle. Anton scores extraordinarily high on Factor 1, but his behavior is not impulsive. It is methodical, consistent, almost ritualistic. He is what researchers call a primary psychopath with a personal code, someone whose complete emotional absence has been organized into a philosophy rather than dissolving into chaos. The reason Anton Chigurh is considered one of the most psychologically accurate portrayals of psychopathy in cinema history is precisely this quality. He is not angry. He is not sadistic in the conventional sense. He takes no apparent pleasure in what he does. He is not even particularly interested in the people he encounters. He is simply indifferent in the most complete and absolute sense of the word. And that indifference is more terrifying than any conventional villain motivation could ever be. Because you cannot appeal to it. You cannot negotiate with it. You cannot make it care. Miranda, Tom, Anton, grandiose narcissism, high Machiavellianism, primary psychopathy, three completely different personalities, three completely different methods, three completely different relationships to power, to other people, and to themselves. And yet they share that dark core the researchers identified. None of them experience other people as fully real in the way most of us do. Miranda sees people as an audience or an obstacle. Tom sees people as variables. Anton sees people as largely irrelevant. None of them are governed by the guilt, empathy, or fear of consequences that regulates most human behavior. They have, in different ways and to different degrees, stepped outside the psychological contract that makes ordinary social life possible. Understanding the Dark Triad matters not because you're likely to encounter a Miranda Priestly running a fashion magazine, or a Tom Ripley assuming dead men's identities, or an Anton Chigurh with a captive bolt pistol. It matters because these traits exist on a spectrum, and at the subclinical level, below the threshold of film villainy, they are present in ordinary life, in ordinary relationships, in ordinary workplaces, far more than most people recognize. The boss whose approval is permanently just out of reach. The colleague who positions themselves perfectly in every situation without anyone quite being able to explain how. The person in your life who, when you really think about it, has never appeared to be genuinely affected by anyone else's pain. The Dark Triad doesn't always look like cinema. Sometimes it looks like Tuesday. Next time on Real Psychology, we're analyzing one of the most requested characters since we launched this channel, Hannibal Lecter. The man who reads everyone, manipulates everyone, and does it all with exquisite manners. Subscribe so you don't miss it. I'll see you there.